It is glide bait season, and one of the questions that we get more than anything around here is what is the best rod to throw that 2 to 4 ounce bait on? We're talking tiny clashes, Osakana slides, I-slides, K9s. We're gonna break down the rods that I use today, that I love, that I know will work incredibly well for you guys if you're looking to dissect and fine tune that 2 to 4 ounce category in your glide bait fishing. So if you'd like to come along and geek out on some super dope gear, let's do it, let's go have some fun. Here we go. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle.
Oh, what a stud.
Yeah. Look at that.
That was sick.
Cheers, my friends. Happy Sunday. All right, guys, some breaking news. What's this week at the Hookup Tackle?
What a beautiful post-spawn fish.
Look at that.
Look at that gut on that. That's a nice fish.
Welcome back, my friends. I am Ben with the Hookup Tackle, the Tackle Otaku on Instagram, being joined this beautiful morning by my buddy Callan. Callan, what is up, my friend?
How's it going, dude?
Good. You good?
Oh, yeah.
You look shy.
I look shy?
Yeah. You have a shy moment going on.
Hard to look shy from behind the camera, though.
But you're pulling it off beautifully. I hope you guys are having an amazing day. Today, we are talking about one of my favorite categories of baits, and that's glide baits. I love talking about all tackle, right? But when we start talking about swim baits and glide baits, it's hard not to get excited. So, you know, for me, I love styles of baits that require us to input ourselves into the bait and to make it do whatever it is we need it to do in order to get that strike, right? And jerk baits come to mind, topwater come to mind, and glide baits come to mind. It's kind of the three main ways that we really get to impart ourselves into the bait in order to have success. So it's so fun to use these style baits. Now, what we're doing today is we're gonna break down 5 rods that I think should be on your radar for that 2 to 4 ounce category, okay? If you are new to swim bait fishing, most people, I would say, that get into swim bait fishing start with a rod in that 2 to 8 ounce range. And there's a ton of those rods. Like almost every brand makes a kind of universal swim bait that's rated from, you know, 1 to 6 or 2 to 8 or these huge weight ranges, right? And it's very, I mean, it makes sense that most guys would venture into that rod as a starting point because you don't really know what you want to do yet, right? If you're new to swim bait fishing, you're probably thinking, oh man, I want to throw a Depths 250, which is over 6 ounces. I want to throw a DRT Klash 9, which is 4 ounces. Of course, I have to throw a TK, which is 2 ounces. Maybe I'll throw a Ghost or a Mother, which is 10 ounces, right? So you're kind of, your head's all over the place. You're not really sure exactly what you want to do yet. But usually as you start getting into, you know, the routine and you start throwing things, you tend to want to fine tune your approach. And it's the same with anything, right? If you're not a swim bait guy, you're probably going through the same thing with your topwater fishing, with your jig and worm fishing, right? So on and so forth, right? So when we get into swim baits, usually the first place we go after we've established that kind of larger 2 to 8 ounce rod is, okay, this 2 to 8 ounce rod throws this little 2 ounce TK or this 4 ounce K9. It throws it, but God, it's a lot of rod. There's got to be something better out there, right? So this is the swim bait question that we get more than anything is, what's the best rod for throwing a TK and a K9, right? A 2 to 4 ounce. Now, if you're not a DRT fan, it could be something like a Shad glide, right? Something like a Chad Shad, you know, the new I-slide from Megabass, Osakana slide, something in this 2-3 ounce range, right? This is kind of I would say the magical all-around size for what's currently happening in swimbait fishing right now. Tons of shad glides on the market. Wakes, TKs, K9s continue to dominate. So this is a really important category to have your stuff dialed so that you're ready for when a fish bites, but also you're having a good time and you're not killing yourself to throw these huge combos for something that is tiny and easy to throw, right? So today we're gonna break that down. Cal, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's dive in. I'm gonna talk about 5 rods that I think you guys should keep on your radar. Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of rods in this category. I'm gonna give you some personal insight into what I like, into what I've been using and what I've had really good success with. Also gonna talk about a rod that I don't use, but that we sell a lot of and that has really good feedback. A lot of guys here use, right? So I'm just gonna try to give you information. Take the information and apply it however is best for your fishing. First, before we get into specifics, let's talk about what I'm looking for. So today we're talking about glide baits. When we're talking about glide baits, we are talking about baits that have some type of treble hook. Now, the same rod for me ends up working great for rigged soft baits also. So the same rod could also be a great like mag draft rod, for instance, like an 8-inch mag draft falls into this weight range category. Same with line throughs, like a 316 Rising Sun, great for the same category because of that treble hook, right? So these are baits that we are going to manipulate to get to move side to side. Usually when the fish come up to them and they eat them, they usually T-bone it somehow, headshot it somehow, right? But they're usually attacking it from the bottom or from the side. And because it has these dangling treble hooks, a lot of times the fish will get hooked in strange places, right? The treble hook just kind of gets in the way and forces the bait on the outside of the mouth. It's just like crankbait fishing in traditional fishing, where you need to make sure that the rod has enough give and is parabolic enough to where when that fish is head shaking and trying to pull that thing, that the rod is intuitively kind of bending and bowing with that fish and giving, so it's not just popping those hooks off, right? And this is the challenge a lot of times to when you buy a 2 to 8 ounce rod or a 3 to 9 ounce rod or something that really goes high in the category, is a lot of times they tend to be too fast and too powerful and have the ability to handle a 6 or 7 or 8 ounce glide bait, and they're just almost a little overkill and too strong for, you know, this range of baits. So I want to make sure all the rods I'm going to talk about today have this really nice parabolic bend to them, have a nice tip so that it's easy for me to load these baits. So if I'm making a shorter, more accurate cast, the tip is going to load and help me kind of just propel the bait out. Because a lot of times if I'm throwing a TK, I'm not firing it, you know, 500 yards into the middle of the lake, throwing it down the edge of a dock or down this little weed line edge. And same thing with, you know, K9 or shad glide or whatever. A lot of times the casting is more accuracy involved and less just huge bomb casts, right? So the rod needs to have a soft enough tip, a good bend through the middle, and then obviously plenty of backbone to handle the weight. Let's talk about a couple that I absolutely love. These first 3 rods are rods that I go back and forth from all the time, and any of them would be amazing options for you. So since I picked this one up, we'll start here. This is a Megabass rod. This is a Destroyer P5. This is a Mark-56. Okay, so the Mark-56, just to spec it out for you guys, is 7 foot 6 inches 3/4 to 3.5 ounce is the lure rating. Now, a K9 is 4 ounces. It throws it just fine. So I use lure ratings to understand kind of where the rod is supposed to be, but I use my own personal experience to tell myself what the rod's actually capable of. And this is an amazing K9 rod. So if you guys are looking for a rod that can throw a TK and a K9, or, you know, a shad glide and a larger shad glide, or whatever it is that you're trying to do, this is a sick rod to do that. And the other reason that I love this rod is you could put a 100 size or a 150 size reel. I have an Antares DC Monster Drive on this one. I have a Steez A on my other one. it feels like I'm just fishing a normal rod, like a crankbait rod. Yet it's a swim bait rod. Love this rod. It's got a large grip in the back. It's positioned properly. It's short enough to where it's still relatively easy to manipulate when I'm close range, but it's long enough to where if I do need to fire a cast all the way down a bank, it has plenty of line pickup, okay? So the Mark-56 from Megabass and Destroyer P5, that's the first rod that you should keep on your radar. The second rod, and for me, these two rods are kind of like brothers, where they're best friends and they hate each other at the same time, right? Like I put them against each other all the time and I'm always confused in my head which one I like more. So I just use both of them. This is the Raid Gladiator Anti. This is the Diffuser. Okay, now this is a 7.4. Let me spec it for you. It's 1/2 to 2.5 ounce. It can handle up to 4 ounces, no problem. But let me tell you how I decipher and go back and forth between these two. This rod is a little bit lighter and a little bit shorter. By the way, a Stize fits on it perfect, which is my favorite reel for this category of fishing. I love the Stize. It's aluminum frame, so you can really abuse it. It's got a deeper spool. It's designed for heavier weight. You can use the stock handle and it's fine. You can go with something like a DRT varial handle and it feels bigger, but it fits in your hand so comfortably and it does everything you need without having to go to like a big 300, true swim bait reel, right? What I've figured out with this diffuser is that this is a much better rod than the Mark-56, probably the best rod that I know of right now for manipulating baits that are super sensitive. Okay, so for me, in that category would be something like a Raid Osakana slide. This is a bait that I throw lots of soft plastic glide. Because it's soft plastic, you can overwork this very easily, right? Same thing with a DRT Tiny Klash. I find that when the lip comes out and you have it in a glide mode instead of a crank mode, that it's a small bait. So it needs smaller movements. It needs to be a little bit more accurate on the timing. This rod is so easy to manipulate. Everything about it is great. It's got a larger grip on the back, which is very easy for making short little pitches, short little casts. It tucks just enough to where it's easy and comfortable and not in your way. But because the length is shorter at only 7.4, it's really easy to just get in a routine, whether it's little quarter turns or half turns, whatever you're doing to get that bait to move. It's really controlled here. So it's just the easiest rod I've found to get baits like that to walk perfectly without kind of rolling or doing too much nonsense. So for me, this is a better 2-ounce rod than it is a 4-ounce rod. Really, it's my dedicated 2-ounce rod. The Osakana slide lives on it. I don't even mind something like an eye slide, but really it's a TK Osakana slide kind of live on this, but it can handle throwing up to the K9. If I really throw the K9 a lot, I prefer the Mark-56. So that's kind of my 1-2 punch. Now, a third one that has been in my arsenal for years and years and years, and I've got tons of people on this rod in the shop, and everybody's a little hesitant at first, but then they come around and decide, yeah, that rod's absolutely ridiculous, is the TS Destroyer Blackjack from Megabass. Now, this rod's been on the market for quite some time. It specs out crazy. It's 711, 1/2 to 4 ounce, okay, which is exactly in our wheelhouse. This is, if I was going to pick one dedicated 4-ounce rod for a K9, this is it. Okay, this pretty much lives on this rod. Even though it maxes out at 4 ounces, this is also my dedicated Slide Swimmer 250 rod, which is a 6-ounce bait. So for me, even though it says 1/2 to 4, this is more of a 4 to 6. It's long, it's 711. So the reason I'm including it in today's conversation is if you guys are fishing a place where you're using more long casts and you're primarily throwing a 4-ounce bait, like a K9 or maybe like a 3-ounce bait, like a Chad Shad, or you know, a different Shad style glide. But then every once in a while, you need to drop down in size to something like a TK or you know, Osakana slide or something like that. This is a fantastic rod to have in your arsenal. It's easy to drop down, but that 4 ounce is kind of its sweet spot. It's like the money spot, and it just fishes it so beautifully. It's long, 7-11, so again, it's going to be a better open water rod or longer casting rod than it is a short distance rod. You can see it's still got all that kind of bend. You know, here in Arizona, a lot of times we're running real tight, real parallel, and still making shorter little casts with it. Super easy to manipulate, even the shorter casts with it. This rod, when it first came to market, was when I was going down to Bacharach every 2 to 3 weeks. I spent several years down there guiding in Bacharach, and I've caught more 10-pounders on this rod than any rod in my arsenal. Anywhere from an A-rig to a Citizen to a Rising Sun to a glide bait, it handles everything so beautifully. So strongly, strongly recommend this as a rod if you are a canine nut, right? So if you live on the 4 ounce and then every once in a while go to 2, I would choose this one over the Mark-56. If you live at the 2 ounce and every once in a while go to 4, well, then the Mark-56 is where I'd go. That's how I would determine between those two. Super, super cable rod. That is the Blackjack from Megabass. 2 other rods I want to talk to you about. This first one is a rod that Griff has used since I've known Griff. He's a huge fan of this rod. A lot of guys in the shop are huge fans of this rod. I'm also a huge fan of this rod. Just I like my other ones better, but the price point may change people's mind on this. So this is the Evergreen combat stick. We used to call this the ND 180 rod. It's the 7/8 extra heavy is what I call it. Now, instead of ND 180, they call it the tournament swim-bait and wake-bait rod. So whatever you want to call it, it's the 7/8 extra heavy. Don't let extra heavy scare you. The lure rating on this is 1/2 to 4 ounce. Okay, so same lure rating technically as the Blackjack. It's got a really beautiful soft tip up here. Okay, so the soft tip really allows you to cast those baits well. The only hesitation I have with this rod is that it's really fast and strong in the first 3/4 of it. Okay, so you can see right here in the middle, it does not bend very much. You kind of have to get to this top quarter before you start getting that bend. So for me, for a bait like a rat or a larger walking bait, it's perfect. But I've watched Griff throw glides on this rod for years, and he's had just incredible success. And you're at a 200-ish price point instead of a 400, 500, or 600-ish price point, which is what we've just spoken about. So if you're on a tighter budget and need a great rod that can manipulate that 2 to 4 ounce range, this rod can easily do it. Keep it on your radar. That's the combat stick 7/8 extra heavy from Evergreen. One more to shout out about. This is a new rod for me that I just added to the arsenal. Jeff has been using this rod for years and loves it. This is kind of bridging the gap. So if you want something a little more premium, but don't want to jump all the way to the $500 or $600 price point, this puts you at $399. This is the Lowdown Customs. This is the 7/9 medium heavy. This is built for 1 to 4 ounce baits. It's absolutely perfect for a TK, it's perfect for a canine. It's a great kind of all around, can do everything in that arsenal. It keeps you in a true swim bait rod, so you have the longer handle, you have that bigger grip back there, you have the parabolic bend all the way through it. It does have down wrap guides. Everything about it is perfect for the category we're in. It just puts you in a slightly more elevated rod than that Evergreen, so just depending on where you are, could be another fantastic option for you to cover all the bases. And we're done. We're done here, Callan. All right, that's a wrap. If you guys have any questions on anything that I didn't cover, whether it's specific about, you know, my rods or the gear or the line or anything like that, please drop it down. I guess while we're mentioning line, I pretty much live on 16-pound fluoro for this entire category. Sometimes I'll jump up to 20 if I need to, but pretty much anytime I'm throwing a TK K9, an ice slide, the Osakana, the Chad Shad, any of that stuff. I pretty much live on 16-pound fluoro. Anywhere in there is good. Remember, the lighter the line you go, the more movement and easier to manipulate the bait. The heavier the line goes, the less you're gonna break off. So it's this balance, right? Do you wanna throw a $100 bait on 12-pound? I don't. So 16 is kind of a good blend of the two. So you're just gonna have to gauge your ability there. When I fished with Butch Brown, he was heaving around 250s on 12-pound. Crazy. But I also watched him break off a couple of 250s on 12-pound. So if you don't wanna do that, you're just gonna have to play with lines to figure it out. But with that said, if you guys have questions on anything that we talked about, drop it down below. I will get answers for you. Also, I leave my Instagram handle in the beginning of every video so you guys know how to reach me before hours, after hours, pretty much 24/7. If you guys ever have a rod question, a real question, you want to dive down a rabbit hole, I'm happy to help. I want to make sure you guys are having as much fun as possible on the water. And this is a very special category. So enjoy throwing these 2 to 4 ounce glides. They're so fun to throw, especially when you have the right gear. So Cal will put links to everything we talked about. And until next time, my friends, on behalf of myself and Griff and Cal and everybody here, peace out. Thank you for watching our videos. Thank you for the business, and we will see you again soon. Later.